live to the world. So we're on Clubhouse, and there's going to be a little thing on LinkedIn Live as well, but just to create a little bit of anticipation and all of that, and have a little conversation. But ultimately, Mr. Perryman, this is a conversation between me and you about how do we reduce cost without compromising customer experience, especially at this time as well. So, in fact, do you want to start and just tell everybody who you are?
Why not? Why not? So I'm James Perryman. I run a business called Momentus, and part of what I focus on, or what the business focus on, is customer experience and customer engagement. And it's not just thinking about kind of what you're doing for customers, the experience you provide, your journeys, what your NPS or your CSAT looks like. It's about within your business as well, how your people feel, how they're engaged, how much do your leaders embrace customer thinking, customer championship? How do you bring the outside in? Thinking about your customer experience maturity, that kind of thing. In addition to that, we look at things like team effectiveness and team engagement, career and leadership development as well. They're kind of all integral parts to being a successful business, or when we work with individuals, helping them really think about their capability and the impact they make. And sometimes that's customer facing, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's quite personal.
Yeah, perfect. And why are you the right person to be talking about customer experience?
Why me? Well, through my corporate career before starting Momentus, I did quite a bit of customer experience work as being an internal consultant. So I was part of a team where we had different strands of the business. One of them was about customer experience. I was the consultant on a big transformation project that took place within O2, which is where I was, which was all around the kind of the basic products and services that O2 sell, phones, making calls, sending texts, all that basic stuff. Really help them think about how do they transform that whilst delivering a brilliant customer experience, making it cheaper, offering more. And since leaving, I do quite a bit of coaching and training around customer experience, whether that's communication skills and how you communicate with customers, or how you manage complaints, or how do you become a customer-centric organization. So I do that either through training workshops or one-to-one coaching, or through leaders, kind of helping managers be better customer advocates.
Perfect. Yeah, so just a little bit about myself. It's Lee Houghton from Get Knowledge. Ultimately, our strapline, or one of our key things, is to enable business leaders to reduce their cost or improve their productivity whilst delighting their people and the customers. And I think at this point in time, I think there's no more compelling need that people need to reduce their cost. And customers' needs have been in a bit of flux over the last 12 months, to say the least.
Yeah.
So I think just so that we're both on the same page, James. In fact, let me just say how this is being facilitated. So we are running a bit of an experiment at the minute. We're doing a LinkedIn Live, and we're also live on Clubhouse. And what we're going to do is we're going to run this for a little bit of time, and then we're going to end the LinkedIn Live, and we're going to move it purely over to Clubhouse to speak to and welcoming the people that are listening. Then we'll take the questions and we'll have a conversation on Clubhouse. So before we split off, it's just going to be me and James chatting. We might answer some of the typed questions that come through via LinkedIn and stuff first, but then we will be inviting questions in Clubhouse, but purely to and from a Clubhouse audience, which is amazingly exciting. Rightio. So if you had to define customer experience, and just to make sure we're both on the same page with what our definitions of customer experience are, how would you do that?
In its simplest form, and it sounds really noddy, but it's what your customers experience about you. And I think the important thing is to say, well, that's easy to say that, but how does that make it different? It's not a customer journey. So a customer journey is the steps that you make a customer go through across your systems, across your processes, your people, your touch points, whatever it might be. And sometimes they're quite clunky, sometimes they're quite seamless. That clunkiness, that seamlessness is the experience. It's how you make a customer feel when they interact with you. It's how easy you make it for them to do business with you. It's how delighted you make them feel when you surprise them. It's how delighted you make them feel when something goes wrong, but you fix it and you take the pain away from them and you deliver your products, your services, your engagement with them in a fantastic way. It's their experience is effectively kind of how they see your brand. It's that outer shell of all the nuts and bolts that go on the inside.
Yeah, and I guess just to add a little bit onto that as well, I think it's towards a particular destination, or it's for a particular purpose. I think in my head, so a customer starts a journey to get somewhere for a reason.
Yeah.
And whether you create that need, so whether you as a business ask enough questions and prompt enough thinking to create that need, I think it's a customer's experience is shaped to satisfy an ultimate destination. Or I don't know whether I'm wording it right, but I think that's a part of it, the end destination.
It is, yeah. Yeah, I mean, most often a customer will engage with you for a specific purpose, and customers are different. It's part of what I talk about and speak about and train about. We've got different behaviors, so some customers might want to interact with you in the shortest possible time, get straight to the point. Others want the experience. They want to feel like you care about them. They want to feel valued. They want to feel and have trust for you as a business and a brand. But ultimately, they've got a purpose for getting in contact. They're not just kind of just generally going to go on your website just for a little look. They will have found you for a reason. There's purpose behind it, as you say. So there's ultimately a destination, whether they want to get to it and fulfill it there and then, or whether it's something they want to get to a point with so they can compare you to the competition, so they can sleep on it overnight because it's quite a big investment of money, whatever it might be. But you're right, it's there's a purpose, and it's the journey. It's the journey you take them on, but it's how that journey feels. That's the experience.
Why is it important to understand feelings?
Do you know what? When I engage with National Rail, when the first lockdown started and they shut down the call centres, they didn't talk to me about how I sorted my train ticket out. That was going to effectively was a train ticket for 3 days' time. It made me feel angry, made me feel quite anxious. It made me feel quite stressed. That meant I really didn't like National Rail or Trainline, as it was. Sorry, so Trainline. That feeling, that translates. So I'm going to tell 10 people about that experience with Trainline, that I couldn't get through to them. They didn't show any empathy for me. Granted, they're really busy. Lockdown wasn't something in their business plan. None of us predicted it. But do you know what? That's how it made me feel. And I tell other people about it. And that influences what they think about Trainline if they've not had an experience. Make me feel valued. Make me feel like I understand that you're in unprecedented times and it's really difficult, but you're trying to do something about it. You're trying to empathize with me as a customer, and you're going to do something right that will be important to me and I'll value. That will make me feel good. That will make me feel positive, and that will make me feel an advocate about your brand. Feelings is one lens. Certainly when you do customer journey mapping, it's a great lens to use to say at every point in our journey, how do we want a customer to feel? Do we want them to feel excited? Do we want them to feel trust? Do we want them to feel loyalty? What might it be? And then you measure it. You can use touch points to ask a customer, how did you feel at this point?
Yeah, I think thoughts and feelings ultimately drive behavior as well, whether that is a behavior that you want them to do or a behavior that you don't want them to do. So in that National Rail example, the behavior that they prompted was a negative behavior in terms of the recommendations or the people you spoke to and the actions that you took. So I think by understanding people's feelings and how you want them to feel can help you influence how you want them to behave at each step of that journey as well, which I think is a fundamental part of what we do as improvement people and what businesses need to do to succeed.
Yeah, you're right. And I think on that, you're right. That how you feel kind of influences your behavior. And so therefore, as a business, you've got to think, so what will that behavior look like? And are we ready for it? So carry that example on. My behavior then was to go straight onto Twitter to try and send a tweet or get a direct message to them, because generally, do you know what, when you're complaining, Twitter is your way to get an answer. That was my behavior. Were Trainline ready for me on Twitter? No, it took days to get a response. So then I'm Googling CEO escalations, so suddenly I'm impacting, their CEO escalations team that I'm sure they've got. These are my behaviors. If they're not ready to handle those behaviors, that's not as good as A, nailing it and getting it right in the first place, or B, having the right processes, teams, whatever it is in place to map and manage my behaviors and my feelings.
Yeah, no, completely. So I guess the topic of this conversation is how to reduce cost whilst not compromising customer experience. How do you do that? How would you reduce cost or go about it or understand what you need to do?
I think it's a bit like we were saying, feelings is a good lens when you come to customer journey mapping. Cost is another one, looking at where you spend money. And I think what you've got to do is step back and look at the different points at which, or look at your experience, look at your journey that you provide for customers, and say, at each of the key points, whether that's an internal action or step that needs to be taken to fulfill that part of the journey, whether it's a customer interaction, so it's a call center, it's it's live chat, it's delivering a product or service and how we go about delivering it. What is the cost involved with that, and is there a different way of doing it? So if it's about having a call center, and you say, do you know what, we're in really tight times, we've got to take some seats out, we can't afford to have this many people in the call center, then okay, that means the average kind of answer time is going to go up. So do we implement more chat? Do we put a chat bot in? Do we try and squeeze the time in which people are on the phone with customers, which is not an ideal answer? But what can we do? What are all the variables we can do? Do we outsource our call centers? Do we go offshore? What are the different options, and look at those points. But I think when you're looking at saving costs, the key thing is to think, what will the impact be on the customer by doing that? And is that acceptable? Does it change the experience but not degrade it? And actually a change might be a good thing. Or do we need to manage some expectations with customers about how we're doing things differently? Or do we look internally, do we engage our people, so the people right across the business, whether they're in operational areas or more kind of marketing areas or innovative areas, to say, what could we do differently? What new ways are there of doing things? Think outside the box on it. Or do we ask customers and just say, look, what's important to you about how we work with you, about how you engage with us, about how you consume our products and services, and what's important, what's not important? And that will give you a lens of, do you know what? Customer has just told us that the ability for us to deliver within 24 hours just isn't important. People don't need our product within 24 hours. They're happy to wait 3 days. So why are we spending £1 million having the capability to ship things within 24 hours? Let's eliminate that cost when customers don't need it in the majority of cases. But sometimes you need that outside thinking, or thinking from the inside, but away from your own headspace, to know where those opportunities are.
What would you do first? So if somebody's listening now and they're going, okay, I've got huge cost challenges, and I don't want to annoy any of my customers or my people, what would you do first? What's the first thing that you would advise?
I think the first thing is absolutely understand where your costs are, and whether they're from a customer perspective, are they acquisition costs, retention costs, or are they cost to serve and cost to operate, and see where the biggest ones are, and perhaps where there's a biggest opportunity, and see if there's any trends. Have your acquisition costs been going up? If so, why? Have your retention costs been going up? And what does that look like in terms of retention, in terms of churn, in terms of customer spend? If your KPIs and your metrics are all wrong, if it's costing more to acquire but you're not acquiring, or it's costing more to retain and your churn is going up, something's going wrong, and there's potentially an opportunity there to reduce and spend, or change where it's being spent. I think other than that, the most important thing is to go out and try and engage customers, or the people who interact with your customers, to say, what's working, what are they liking, what are they not liking, and see where that shines a light in terms of where you're spending some of that money. Because if you're going to start make changes, do it somewhere where customers will either value it, or they won't worry about the change and won't worry about the difference. Because otherwise, if you try and save some costs and actually it's quite detrimental, and customers start kind of voting with their feet, then that would have been the wrong place.
Yeah. I think there's two things that are going to be at play as well. Is there's going to be people who look at things with a short term pair of glasses on, and the people that look at things with a long term pair of glasses on, and it might be that the right thing is to do nothing as well, and not do make a knee jerk reaction. But I think I wrote an article that I'm publishing next week actually, and one of the things in that, it says you need to understand the full end-to-end customer journey, because it's changed so much over the last 12 months. If you think about it now, we now video call the doctor. We have contactless deliveries on everything. There's been technological growth of 10 years in 10 months. And I think because of all of that, we now deliver improvement virtually. So we coach and facilitate it online and stuff, as opposed to going into businesses and things. So how you did things 10 months ago, 12 months ago, are different to how you do them now. So I think there's loads of opportunity to have a look at that as well. So you might have some existing processes that are redundant in the way that you now deliver as well.
And I agree. And I think, ultimately it still comes down to, what's that experience you want to provide. So I deliver training, and I did a little bit in September, but prior to that, my last training session had been something like the 14th of March, 2020, before the world changed. And so what was important to me when I deliver training is, how do I make my delegates feel from the moment they're seeing an advert for a training program, to booking on, the emails they get, the prep work they need to do, the welcome they get when they walk in the room, the enjoyment on the day, the learning on the day, the breaks, the comfort, the aftercare. That for me is the whole experience of learning, as well as the actual thing they're learning. So when that moved online, it's like, okay, I can't meet them face to face. I can't make the eye contact and use body language in the same way. So how do I replicate a really good learning experience with the boundaries that I'm now in, but also the opportunities that I'm now in? And that's a huge cost difference. If I wanted to book a venue in the middle of Manchester for a central meeting room and have 4 breakout rooms, you're talking a lot of money to have that all day. Using Zoom for whatever per month, I can have a central meeting room and I can have 10 breakout rooms like that. They're in it instantly. So actually, it's a quicker experience, albeit slightly different. So how do I change that? But you're right. People, they shouldn't have a knee-jerk reaction. That's one of the things I was coaching businesses on around kind of April, May, was to say, don't just shut stuff down. Don't kind of cover your eyes or block your ears or cover your mouth, because customers see that and sense that straight away. Just take stock and say, right, what do I know? What can I still do? What can't I do? What do my customers need from me? Most importantly, they need that reassurance. They need, that stuff is still fine, or they need answers. And if I haven't got the answers, when will I have them? Just slow down and take it easy. And I think what we're finding with small startup businesses that I've been working with is they can do that, because it's in their nature to react, to be in the moment, to sense what's changing and go for it. Larger businesses who, like you say, work at a year at a time, year-long objectives, suddenly when something changes, they're lost. They're like, this isn't in our plan. We've just spent all that time doing our budget planning and thinking about our customer experience plans for the year, and suddenly it's changed. And oh my God, we've got to steer our tank around that. It's going to take ages. Whereas actually, they can think differently, and they can have big objectives and goals, but they can have smaller ones as well, and that help them react and help them be agile.
Yeah, completely. I heard so just to pick on what you said, I heard an amazing quote the other week, and it said, you shouldn't hold on to the steering wheel too tightly, just grip it loosely. And what I meant by that is you're heading towards a destination, and if you are hell bent on hitting everything along the way and you've got to get to it, then you're not gonna. Everything isn't a straight line. You've kind of got to absorb all of that variation and stuff, especially in these uncertain times. So I thought that was quite a good way of looking at it. Have clarity about where you're trying to get to,
Yeah.
just accepting that it's a moving feast,
Yeah.
especially at the minute. Especially
Yeah.
at the minute.
Definitely.
One of the things that in fact, actually, I think in about 4 or 5 minutes time, we'll drop off this and we'll just do this on in Clubhouse,
Yeah.
because there's Marianne in Clubhouse, and I want to bring her into the conversation in a second with us, but we'll just do that exclusively in Clubhouse. And I read a book, Stephen Covey's Speed of Trust. Have you read it?
No, I've heard about it. I've seen kind of clips from it.
He suggests that if high trust reduces cost and increases speed. And I think we have gone through 10 months where we have had to learn how to trust our people more with the remote working. We've had to trust a lot more. But not necessarily are we trusting our customers anymore, or are we trusting our customers anymore? What do you think? Do we trust customers or do we not?
I think there's always been an element of, do we trust customers, particularly when you're providing products, I think. And if your experience and offering isn't 100% robust, and there are flaws and there are potential failure points, then people can exploit that. And if you don't trust customers, to be honest, then you're already on a bit of a sticky wicket there, which will only be making it worse right now. I think you have to work on the basis that you do trust a customer and that a customer is always right. And I know that's really old school, the customer's always right. But you know what? It comes back to the feelings. If you've made a customer feel a certain way, you can't say they're not feeling that. You've made a customer feel a certain way. That's how they feel, and that's a really valuable currency. So you've got to trust them with it. And do you know what? If Amazon's a great example. You believe you shipped a product to a customer, it didn't arrive. They tell you it's not happened, it's not there, or it's been damaged. Do you know what? They trust you, and they say, in the majority of cases, we'll send another one. There's probably a price point at which they have that. And you know what? If the other one does arrive, or you want to bin the other one, or you want to sell it on eBay secondhand because it's broken, cool, you do that. That's fine. We're just going to send you another one. That shows ultimate trust. And that's why when I run workshops and I say to people, give me an example of your very best customer experience, Amazon always features. It's very rare that Amazon features in a bad experience, because they've got that trust. And I think you've got to do it because it helps you build empathy. It helps you get to a solution that is right for customers.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And so just on that point, in fact, Kieran Flanagan has just commented saying thanks, he's got to go. So see you later, Kieran. Thanks for joining us. Do you think, is it easier for a company to trust when they are a bigger company and they've got the money to do so? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And
I've never thought about that before, but the Amazon example is often spouted as a really good example. But
yeah,
is it because they're so big they can afford to do that?
I think sometimes what gets in the way of trust is process, and this is what we're allowed to do. If we go back to the train line example, big company, did I feel like they trusted me that I legitimately could not travel? My travel plans got changed, and that I wasn't trying to take advantage of the situation and get a refund. No, I didn't really feel that trust, to be honest. It felt like hard work. And so, but they're a big company. But the computer would have said, "This is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it." So I think it comes down to what are your principles? What are your customer design and your customer experience principles that guide everything you do? They design your design. They guide your design process. That governance when you're looking at making changes, launching new products, changing things. Do they stay in line with our principles of surprise and delight, of the customer is always right, of customer first, whatever it might be? That's where your trust comes from, whether you're a small company or a big company. And I think when you're a small company, if you're a startup, you're in that really, really big growth stage, you've got to trust your customers, because they're going to be the ones that help you grow by consuming your products and services, buying more, spending more, staying longer, recommending you, getting more people on board, and so on. So you've got to trust them.
Yeah, and I agree entirely. It's all about value. It's your values and being authentic. And
Mm,
if you're a smaller business, um, I think it's even more important to trust your customers more, because you're trying to create that differentiation of brand brand loyalty.
yes.
Well, even though it might seem counterintuitive or counterproductive to trust them.
Yeah.
So Darren Clyde has just commented saying, thanks, Lee and James. Good discussion, like the customer trust part. And then he just said, smaller companies might have the advantage of a smaller customer base where they can provide a more personal service. Yes, completely. Completely. I think I think whether you're big or whether you're small, I think there's different challenges. Um, different challenges with it. So if you, in fact, just before we drop off this and just go into Clubhouse, um, if it is a smaller company. So
Yep.
let's split it up actually. Smaller
Yep.
company versus big company. If you're a smaller company and you want to reduce your costs without compromising your customer service, what would you do?
If I'm a small company and I wanted to reduce costs, I would probably look at, I'd probably look, if it's cost overall as a business, then I would look internally at where I'm spending money on the business. I would probably do that first, because as a smaller company, you've got people who generally are probably more loyal. They're a more significant part of your business. And if you said, look, guys, we want to still offer an absolutely fantastic customer experience. It's part of our strategy. It's part of our growth. We've got to cut out, our travel. We've got to put a ban on travel. We've got to kind of stop doing X, Y, Z. That is an internal cost that's about us and how we work, just for 6 months, just for 3 months, just to see what difference it makes. But we're going to bring it back, and actually, what we're going to do in retrospect with that is make sure you've always got access through to the CEO to have a conversation at any point, or whatever it might be that's a softer, non-cost impacting thing. Then I would do that first, because people's, when you've got people engaged, when you've got engaged employees, you've got their hearts and minds. They're passionate about your business, they're passionate about your customers. And and I worked with the startup kind of indirectly as an associate for the best part of a year, kind of wrapping up around September last year in the kind of the secondhand car online market. And they had to make those decisions. They started as a startup, throwing loads of money at lovely London offices, just a great working environment. But as things changed, as they took a dip, as they went into March and April and the beginning of kind of COVID in the first of the lockdowns, they had to make some changes. So they had to suddenly invest in more laptops for people so they could work from home. So they had to compromise. So they worked out what do we stop so that we still provide a great customer experience to people. And they just made those decisions, but they communicated it really well. They communicated it in a really caring way with people, that said, look, we can't do this without you. You're part of our DNA. You're part of what makes this business brilliant. We've just got to make some changes in the short term to help us get through this, and we'll keep talking to you. We'll keep going. We'll keep you involved, and and keep talking to us. Let us know how you feel, what we could do differently. What would you suggest we do differently? But they didn't change anything about the customer proposition. In fact, they improved it. So, they made it even better for customers whilst streamlining some of the costs.
I think what you've probably hit the most important point for me there around the engagement of the people. And I think that is probably, whether a big company or a small company, the easiest way to reduce costs whilst engaging or without compromising customer experience, because your people are the ones who are closest to the customer.
Yeah.
They're the ones who will know what is working and what's not working if you've not got direct access to the customer. So I think engaging in people, collaboration is probably the first thing to do, irrelevant of company size. Yeah, no, great stuff. Great stuff. Before we drop off this and then take some questions and bring some people in from Clubhouse, where can people find out more about you, James?
They can jump onto LinkedIn. You find me on LinkedIn, James Perryman, and from there you'll get links to a website and phone number and email address. If you want to look at the website, it's Momentus, which is momentus.uk.com. So have a look at us. There's myself. There's business partner Sandra, who is the ex customer experience director from O2. So she's bringing a lot of that expertise in terms of customer experience, customer customer experience maturity and so on. So yeah, take a look and get in contact if you've got any questions or we can help or anything like that.
Perfect. Right, let's take some questions from the Clubhouse stuff. So we'll do that. So Marianne, if you want to come up and join us, please do so. But for everybody else, see you later.